Welcome to a special Roundtable edition of Turnbuckle Bros. Hello and welcome to a special Roundtable edition, and we are going to call this the King's Roundtable. So hear ye, welcome to the King's Roundtable edition of Turnbuckle Bros. I am your co-host, Matt Huett. Today we have some familiar faces and one first-timer on the show. With me, as always, is the Blue Chipper, the Day Tripper, the Lime Ripper, the king of all things baseball, Steve Mutzu. And, of course, we have returning again our good friend Chris Baud, writer from Deadspin.com. Also, we have our buddy Tyler Ensor coming to us from California today. And a first-timer on the show, our buddy DVD Avins. Welcome, everybody, to the King's Roundtable. What's happening?
Not much.
All right, so today we're going to have some free-form discussion. We got a couple topics we're going to talk about today. All things Diamond Mind Online, the greatest fantasy baseball website in all of the land and the universe, if you will. And so we got some stuff we're going to talk about. Just got to chat with a bunch of baseball fans, talk some strategy, talk some maybe some baseball history, all kinds of stuff. So, what do you guys want to talk about first? You guys want to talk about aggressive loan taking in fantasy baseball? How about that? All right.
That's
so, all right. So, Chris, this is something you've wanted to talk about for a while now. You brought this up to us and said this would be a great topic. Chris, what is your take on aggressive taking? Let's go.
I feel that on the advice board, I'm very active on the advice board, right? And typically people come and say like, hey, here's my situation. I'm in week 5 and my team is like 2 games out first, which I do. And typically the advice is like, well, I would wait. And see what happens and accrue more money and, save up to get the most expensive player you can at the end of the year. And I always feel like I don't know, I would get someone good, And I used to be more patient, but honestly, I've been I've run it. I think the thing is the most important thing is you have to be realistic in assessing your team and the conditions of the league. There was one team I had that I just felt like I knew from the start, like this is a really good team. It was kind of at the end of last cycle and we had been through so many leagues. I know who the good values are and we got a lot of these players. And I'm like, this team is really good. And I was in 4th place after week 3 or week 4, and I ended up winning, and I didn't do anything crazy. I just kind of went with it. I'm like, I the best team in this division, and I just let it play out because I'm like, these guys are going to play better. Sometimes you have to look at it and be like, I don't know, this is a tough league, and I don't want to fall 8 games behind after 3 or 4 weeks, and maybe I have to do something. And I've done it a couple of times, and honestly, I felt like it has worked out really well. And I think I'll give you 2 examples. One was it was after week 3. I think I was in 2nd place, and I was playing 2 first place teams that week. My pitching staff is falling apart, and I took out a $6 million loan to get John Smoltz. And this was a couple cycles ago, and he was very reasonable. He was $9 million. He might be 11 now. And he was brilliant. In 6 weeks or something, he's close to being the Cy Young winner. He's 2nd in ERA and was 16-5 or something. and that was a huge help. And then there's another team where, and I won the division. There's another league where, like, everyone in the league was within like 4 games of each other, and I didn't feel like my team was any better than anyone else, so I took out a loan to get Chase Utley. And I remember Chess was on the board. He was like probably the most helpful player on the advice board.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Chess Whiz, yeah. And he said, "Wow, I would never do something like that." And that ended up working out. And I feel like these are actually 2 cases where I think if you have the perfect player who's out there, who also happens to be like tremendously underpriced, and both these guys were at the time, right? And you can get them. Like, I mean, you might as well get them, because like I feel like playing the extra 3 or 4 weeks with Chase Utley, who's a who costs $12 million, and he's really like he's worth probably 14, 15 million. So like I'm putting out $115 million team for 3 extra weeks versus everyone else's $100 million team. I think you're generating a lot of value.
Steve, what do you got to say about what Chris just said?
I tend to agree. I think people worry about it too much. Like, I just think you can win any way you want. If you want to spend all your money the first day, you can win. If you want, well, one thing that I think is bad that maybe he didn't talk about is the people who make a bunch of small transactions throughout the year and then waste. This only applies in the classic game. Waste a little bit of money on each one. You know what I'm talking about? You borrow $2 million this week, $2 million the next, or you don't borrow. You wait for your $2 million, then you spend it. You cash in a $800K guy and you lose some money. And then next week you do the same thing and you cash in a $900K guy and you lose some money. It might be better just to like take out a loan at the beginning and buy your expensive guy and all those cheap guys too, and not lose that little bit of money, whatever it works out to be at the end of the year, and just play with your full team right off the bat. You know, I think about it like that a lot.
DVD, what do you have to say?
Hey, well, like Chris said, the first thing is you got to understand what your team's position is in the league. If you, too many of the folks on the advice board, I think, are used to being much better than most of the other people in the league. And if that's the case, if you know you're going to make the playoffs, then their advice makes sense. Hold on to your money. But for most people who are asking the advice, making the playoffs is a much less sure thing. And so then you got to go into the math for when does it make sense to spend your money. You can take it all just before the season begins on the Sunday, so you're not paying extra interest. And that's a reasonable way of doing it. You can get a little bit more money on the field overall by waiting a few weeks, but don't wait forever. Okay, we're going to get to the special cases where custom leagues where they change the interest rates later. I know we were talking about that. But for a standard 15 and 5% league, it's tempting to spend that 5% money right away because each week is less than 5% of the season. Letting it sit, it's not going to pay off. So if you've got like a small need in your bullpen or something, sure, spend that money after week 1. But you don't want to be releasing player after player, like Steve said, because $2,000 hit on a $6,000 player adds up. So early in week 3, you get to the point where each week you're getting 15% interest on money you haven't taken, but also each week that's 15% of the remaining part of the season, and then it's 20% of toward 25. No, you're losing more by not spending the money than you are by spending the money. So, unless your only concern is the playoffs, spend the money around week 3, maybe week 4. If your only concern is the playoffs, hold on to it till right before week 9.
That's excellent. What a take on that, DVD. Tyler, I hear from Chris that you made a controversial move in this regard recently. So what's your take on that, and tell us about this move you made?
You mean the Mark Pryor thing, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. So I still don't know if it was the right move, but I was I can't remember exactly. I think it was 4 or 5 games out, maybe a little more of the division, and there were 2 teams ahead of me. And I was looking, the 2 teams so I was chasing Chris's team, and who was the other one, Chris?
The Mixter.
Yes, the Mixter.
He's
So
one of the most successful owners on the game.
so 2 really good teams. So I'm like, I can't fall too far behind. And I had a rotation. I was double acing Sabathia and what's his name? William Bell.
Yeah.
And I had Mark Pryor as like my 3rd starter, and he was pitching really well. But if you looked at the numbers, it looked to me like he was really overperforming to a pretty significant degree. And William Bell was underperforming, so I was just kind of thinking, okay, hopefully he comes around. So I decided to trade in Pryor and get Walter Johnson, and that ate up almost all my money. I think I ended up with 2 or 3 million left toward the end of the season. And it worked out. I won the division, but I don't know. I still don't know if it was the right move. I think it's generally not a good idea to trade in a player. I think Pryor was like $6 million or something, so you lose about 1.5 mil on that trade in, maybe a little more. So I don't know. It's one of those things where it worked, but it might have been making a bad move, and then it just turns out to work anyway.
What can you guys speak of on the timing of moves like that? Because I mean, it could be iffy. You know, we've talked about early in the season and late in the season, and the basically the taxing that it does on your money. So sometimes those risky moves like that pay off. You might lose a little bit. Sometimes they burn you big time. DVD, you brought up something awesome earlier online about the bank accounts and stuff. I would love to hear you talk about that again, because I think it ties into kind of what we're talking about right now.
Okay. So thinking about this in terms of loans confuses people. It even confuses somebody who knows more about the game than any of the rest of us recently on the board. Stop. There's no such thing as a loan. You have 2 bank accounts. You've got the bank account that you already call a bank account that gives you 5% every week. And you've got this other bank account that gives you 15% every week. And it shows you right there, it says available loans. It doesn't have to call it loans. That's just the gloss they put on it. That's how much is in that account right now. And every week there's a forced transfer of some of the money from your high interest account into your low interest account. So if you're in a position where there are some custom league rules and you got to spend in dribs and drabs, sure, spend the money from that low interest account. If for some reason you're in a crazy league where the high interest account pays 15%, but the low interest account also pays 15%, it's easier for your bookkeeping to just take a loan on that Sunday right before, or maybe you have to wait till Monday. I'm not sure to pay nothing on it. Just move it all into one account so you could see it. That's how much money you have. If it was the other way around, if the interest on loans was 15%, but the interest on the bank account was 20%, then you have to move it into the bank account. You're getting more money by taking the quote unquote loan than you would if you didn't.
Wow.
I love that.
I'm going to trust that that's correct.
It sounded pretty correct to me the way that he said it. Yeah. I mean, how do you not believe that?
I was just going to say that I've never thought of it that way, but that's incredibly helpful.
It's not actually a loan. It's a transferring from a high interest account to low interest.
Yeah, and it's super difficult if you think of it as a loan and then you try to do the math on that. You really have to either be incredibly good at math or write a computer script, because the interest compounds daily. So I think thinking of it in terms of a second bank account is really helpful.
Yeah, it's very brilliant, actually.
And that just goes to show that there's so many different, aspects to playing this game. So many different types of strategies and thought processes, and just basic overall things that you could do to be successful. So many different things you could pull from outside of the world into in your real life. Sounds to me like DVD is going to be doing my taxes from now
You
on.
gotta call me by my actual name, David. If you want me to.
David. I mean, he's got a DVD. I mean, DVD's cool, man. I think we should go with that, David. But I mean, but next time I buy a house and want to talk about mortgage rates, David is the first guy I'm reaching out to. But yeah, does anybody else have anything to add on that?
Well, what do you guys think of this Walter Johnson move that Tyler made? I mean, I feel like you can't really argue with the results he got.
Difference between releasing a $6 million player and a $1 million player, it's $1.25 million. It's not something you want to do for no reason. But if you think that's the player who's going to help my team, go ahead and do it. Especially if it's a starter with whose SP door is X, and
Right.
so if you have two other starters who you're going to be acing, this third starter, you're wasting some of his value anyway.
Yeah.
Steve.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
Steve, what do you got to say about that?
Well, with Mark Pryor, you might want to just wait to his 40-game injury and then cash him in because that one's coming. That's another thing people think about. Once a player gets hurt for a certain length of time, you used to make this you do a little math problem. You're like, okay, it's got to go because like it just doesn't work out anymore. He's like worth more to me if I cash him in than if I keep him. Like anytime you get a big injury, just take a look at that. You might want to do something about it.
Yeah, you have to be careful. I think there's a tendency to overreact to injuries, especially to position players.
that's definitely true.
I find you almost don't notice them if you look at there's very few teams where one single position player can go down and you're completely screwed. So I think it's usually worth waiting.
Yeah, I agree. The people overestimate how much they're going to miss.
Yeah.
Joe DiMaggio for 20 games. It sounds bad,
Yeah.
you know.
The
But
Yankees missed him for 20 games almost every year he played.
yeah,
They still won.
but like,
And-
yeah, you put your 800K center fielder out there, and you'll be okay.
You think about it too. Like, what are you going to do with him? Maybe you go 14-6 if you're a really, really good team. And without him, it's not like you're going to go 6-14. He can't possibly cost you that many games. Like he's just not worth that much. No player is worth that much. So
right.
I agree.
The one caveat is if you're playing a custom league with really high interest rates, drop them. If you get somebody gets a 40-game injury, drop them, sign a $500,000 player. Then when the injury is over, drop the $500,000 player, sign them back again, and they'll make
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Should we rehash? Do you want to rehash this Johan Santana move I made? That was like documented on the boards.
Go for it. Let's hear
That
it.
was so I'm in this league with this guy Hoover, right? Who
Yeah.
I honestly don't really know what he's doing. He has like all these two-way players like Leon Day and Monty Ward and Johnny Cooney, and he's doing things like they play the field, they're starting pitchers, they're relief pitchers, and I don't know how he's managing this, but
I've done that thing a lot of times with those guys.
yeah, it's like I've done teams like this. Like I had a like Leon Day Dihigo team, and I have like 15 lineups I use, but he has to be using more because he's shuffling them in and out of the rotation and putting them in the bullpen and stuff too. But anyway, he has a bunch of platoons and stuff. And I figured that it's not only his team, there's other teams. There's a team with like a bunch of platoons and switch hitters like who are much worse right-handed, like Roy White or somebody like that, right? And then like the teams who are division leaders in the other divisions are like heavily right-handed. So I basically figured that Santana, who is a lefty who with reverse splits, right? I figured that Santana is basically the best pitcher. But I can't afford like the Pedro Martinez level guys. But I figured like for under 16 million, Santana was the best pitcher I get. So I took out I took out a loan to get him so I have him for 4 weeks instead for 2 weeks because I'm in whatever it was. I'm 3 games out to start the week. So we talked about on the board, and I guess we'll let Tyler and I talked to Tyler about this a lot. And DVD David.
No, it's DVD. You had it right the first time.
We had an interesting conversation about this. He disagreed with my. He has a different valuation of the left-hand stars in that range. But I'll let you talk about that if you want.
All right. I did think there were better lefties for most people, but I think given your description of the teams that you're facing, you probably picked the best lefty for you because of the reverse splits. And for the 2 weeks early, it really depends on your confidence level. If you think your team has been underperforming and you're going to make up those 2 games, even if you don't upgrade, then sit on the money. So when you finally do upgrade, you can make some bullpen upgrade as well. But if you think your team's performing about the way it should and you got to make the playoffs, then you did exactly the right thing.
And I think you made a point on the board that never really occurred to me for some reason, but it makes a lot of sense, which is that I get kind of excited about reverse splits, and I think a lot of people do because they seem to have quite an edge in this game. But that's already kind of reflected in their ERA and their ERC and stuff. So it might be a mistake sometimes to put more weight on that. I probably have been putting too much weight on that.
The only time I would put weight on that for not losing my train of thought. But without knowing who my opponents are is a little bit for a closer, because closer is going to see pinch hitters. And you don't want him to be, I don't care if it's reverse splits, but you don't want a closer who's really weak against either side.
Right. So
I like my long reliever to be good with reverse splits too, because I like to get the platoon thing going on. If my starters are right-handed, my long reliever is probably going to be left-handed with good reverse splits. Reverse splits, that's how you win. That's it kind of is. It's one of the things I do a lot. Make the other team manage bad. Make the other team's computer manager do dumb stuff.
Exactly.
Now,
Steve, I wanted to talk about this. Actually, you're reminding me. Particularly in SSG, right? You have to really plan what your moves are going to be for a season, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's really vital because you just don't want to pay for stuff like innings and at bats you're not going to use, right?
Yeah.
You can rent them, but you got to get that money back.
Yeah, but you don't lose your money the same way you do in the SSG that you do in the classic game.
Right.
You actually used that. You got your value for it. You know what I mean? You used it like it's actual value. You used those 100 at bats.
Right. But I think you can do often a lot the same thing in the classic game. It doesn't have the same importance, I think, but if you do that, so hey, I'm gonna look to get this guy. I'm gonna look to get I don't know, Jesse Barfield, and then I'm gonna get later in the year. I'll get Dennis Eckersley, right? And I feel it's always good to have funds in reserve for you need to upgrade a relief pitcher, or you get some injury and you need a bench player. And sometimes you just screw up your team and you made a mistake, right? You need another reliever, or you need another infielder, or whatever. But for the most part, I think that the general principle is once you can afford the guys you're planning on getting, and they're clearly the best guys, you just go get them.
Yeah.
You know?
I make a plan. I stick to it. I don't care what has happened in the season. I don't care even if I'm losing. My plan I made at the beginning of the year, that was a good plan. Results be damned, to be quite honest. I know it was a good plan. So I just wait and ride it out. I don't react. I would never have I wouldn't even have known Mark Pryor was doing good or bad. I don't even know. I don't care at all. I make my plan. When I'm supposed to do whatever I'm supposed to do, I do it. Then I don't even really care if the player's doing good or not. It's really irrelevant to me, like what he's done in the season.
That's a good idea. I was going to ask you to do that. Because, yeah, sometimes I find it hard. Like, I had this guy, I had Kiko Garcia at shortstop, and I was planning on upgrading him, but, like, he was hitting, like, 300 with 8 home runs in 3 weeks. I'm like, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, do I just get rid of him? Like,
Well, what's your object? Are you only playing a win, or are you also playing a role play? Because both are legit.
Yeah,
If you're
I mean,
playing a role play, you keep him.
Yeah, it just feels stupid to dump this guy who's like outperforming like any reasonable expectations. So like, I don't know. I end up upgrading him in a offhand way, which was like my second baseman got hurt, so I got somebody to play second and short. So like when the other guy comes back, he'll take over. But
I was going to say,
you know.
too, going back to the discussion of aggressive loan taking, I think maybe one of the factors that contributes to people's conservatism on this issue on the advice boards is that a lot of times when you see aggressive loan taking in standard leagues, it's very poorly done. I think a lot of new players engage in it and they don't do it effectively. So they do a lot of drop this guy because he's not playing well and pick up this other guy. And it costs them $1 million to get the same player, basically, or somebody worse. And they've now paid interest on that $1 million. So I think that could be a big factor.
It's definitely a good point because like the last thing you want to do is make kind of lateral moves. Like you need to make sure you're getting a big upgrade. If you're taking out a big loan, like it has to be someone who's like markedly better. Like
because I think probably not so much in custom leagues, but in standard leagues you do see a lot of that.
Yeah, the guy.
VHS, VHS. I mean DVD. I mean David. What do you got to say about that?
Oh, he called him VHS.
I got to remember that when I nod to what Tyler says, he doesn't know it.
That's why I saw that. It looks like you got something to add to that.
No, just that I was agreeing. So, yeah.
He agrees.
I was wondering if Tyler wanted to ask the question that he asked me in email about 3 days ago about evaluating pitchers, or if that's not a topic we want to go into.
Let's hear it.
Because that ties in. That was prompted by the discussion of was Santana really more valuable than, say, Carl Hubble, not in your particular situation, but in general. And so
Tyler,
releasing trade secrets here.
Yeah.
So my very rudimentary approach to evaluating pitchers has been to just sort by I've been using I like gross production average, which is kind of like a weighted alternative to OPS, but it's basically like sorting by OPS and then looking for the one with the lowest OPS against, or sometimes I look at ERC as well. And when I do it like that, Santana shows up as the 5th best pitcher in the game right after Walter Johnson, Randy Johnson, Maddox, and Martinez, not in that order. So when David, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I do believe his name is Beta Max.
Laser disc.
So when David was pointing to Hubble, and I think there was one other, was it lefty?
Willie Foster.
Oh, Foster. Okay. When he was pointing to them as better, it surprised me, not in the sense that I thought he was wrong, because my approach is not systematic in any way, but I was wondering how he came to that approach, or to that conclusion. And he talked about calculating, and correct me if I get any of this wrong, about calculating sort of a modified runs created against the pitcher. So you can basically calculate runs created by, you can sort of reverse engineer it by taking the numbers from the pitcher getting their total bases from their slugging percent and stuff like that.
I can share some other time. It would be more. I'm not afraid to give up secrets, but it would take too long because it's not the answer to the question. So let's just put aside and say, yeah, I'm doing a runs created based runs per game estimate for each pitcher. But one way or another, you get a runs per game estimate for each pitcher.
And then
and it doesn't much matter how. And I agree, Santana came out better than those other pitchers, but he still wasn't more valuable because you also need to look at how many innings they're going to pitch.
Right.
And I got my own formulas for that. That's based on their rating and how many walks and strikeouts they have per 9 innings and how many batters they face per 9 innings, which is the biggest factor. So you throw all of that together and you get, along with the role that they're going to be, are they acing? Are they going to be in the bullpen for some games and starting, whatever. You figure out what are the innings I can get from this. And what are the innings, how many runs per game is the back of my bullpen going to be worth? Or if you're talking about the back of your bullpen, how many runs per game is the best $500,000 pitcher I can get going to give up? Now, what's the difference? How many runs per game am I saving? And then you multiply how much you're saving by how much they're going to pitch, how many game equivalents, how many 9 innings worth of innings do they pitch. You multiply the runs per game times the game equivalents, and you get how many, Baseball Reference would call it RAA, runs above average is the pitcher. Or runs above replacement if you're not talking about an average pitcher, but the best $500,000 pitcher available. And when you look at that, Foster and Hubble were pitching enough more innings that overcame Santana's advantage in runs per game.
That's very interesting.
I don't doubt that David has a better evaluation system than what I do. I just kind of eyeball everything. I'm like, well, this guy's good.
I'm not sure that my runs per game estimate is not, but my idea of multiplying the runs per game times how much they're going to pitch, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
those are definitely. I think there's a lot of pitchers in the catalog right now are undervalued, who have because they have X durability. And especially, and they're also I found this out the hard way. I was using Sam McDowell, and he had really good numbers. He's cheap, I think, last cycle. But he couldn't get out of the 6th inning because he's throwing so many pitches that even with the VG durability, he's just hitting 120 pitches in the 6th inning. And that's kind of hard to. I guess it takes some experience, I think, but to learn those things. But it's just those type of pitchers do run into pitch count problems, and the true X durability guys who are more efficient, they're pitching a lot more innings.
This is really great stuff so far, you guys. I think this is a good time to actually take a quick commercial break and hear from our first official sponsor of Turnbuckle Bros. Let us hear for the first time from the First Assembly of God. It's a great day at the First Assembly of God. This weekend at the First Assembly of God, we're raffling off a free 2-night stay at the Starlight Motel, a $30 value. Tickets are just $1, and the stay includes Pastor Jodan squatting in your room, equipped with the King James Bible and a bucket of ice cubes. Join us this Sunday. It's a great day at the First Assembly of God. First Assembly of God, Butler County, Missouri. All rights reserved. To Jesus. And all right, we're back, and that is the First Assembly of God. our first sponsor of the show.
It's life changing.
Yeah, so I mean, crazy fans of the show, and they keep paying us money, so they've got a bunch of commercials coming on. So thanks, First Assembly of God, for being with us. I came up with a couple more topics for you guys. I'm going to throw at you. One that me and Steve have discussed before, and I'd like to get your guys' takes on this within 2 words: emotional attachment. We all have the special players that we like, that we love, that we always like to sign, and sometimes for better or worse. And I would like to hear your guys' either thoughts or stories about maybe how emotional attachment has burned you or how you deal with it. Steve, we're going to start with you because you're the world's biggest Jack Clark mark by every stretch of the imagination. Steve, talk to us about emotional attachment and how it affects players in this game.
I have none to these players in this game. If Jack Clark's a good value, I'll sign him. If he's not, I won't. That is the way that goes. I don't have any. I don't care.
Yep, that's exactly what I thought you would say.
My emotional attachment is like putting the championship belt on my waist at the end of the year.
Oh,
that is about where it goes. That's it.
David, emotional attachment. How does this affect you?
It burns me when I don't take players that I like, but I still don't take them unless they get
Tyler, is there anybody that you're partial to that you like to sign, or is there anybody that you like to hold on to or anything like that? Does this affect you at all?
I mean, I haven't been playing long enough, I think, for some of this to happen. Like, I really, really like Jack Crooks as a player. I had him on one team recently. I think I've had him on 2 teams. This was the last pricing when he was a bit of a better value. And he got something like 90 walks in the season, and that was really exciting. But I think I'm with everyone else that I still won't sign him unless he's a good value.
Yeah. Chris, emotional attachment.
Yeah, I definitely have like a handful of guys that I like to use, but it's because they're good,
Yeah.
And like Mike Schmidt was my favorite player growing up as a kid. And he kind of cycles up and down. He goes from being like 18 million, where he's like a crazy value, and like everyone will want him. He's in every league. Then he goes up to like 20.5, and he's not used that much. So like I only use him when he's like 18. So like
I got a bit of a dilemma. Well, kind of, sort of. It's coming in me and Steve's league that we're in, this progression league that we're playing right now. So I'm the Cardinals. At my franchise, the progression league, we started in 73. It's going to run until the end of time. And basically you own that franchise. You got rights to all the rookies that come up, and you can kind of sign whoever and play from there. You basically manage that franchise. It's pretty awesome. I really like it. But we're in 77 right now, and 1979 is coming up. And there's one guy that I've just been obsessing over since this started, and he came up with the Padres, and it's Ozzie Smith. I have to have this guy. I have to find out a way to get him. And so me and Steve have been talking about this the whole way through. And I told him, I said, I got a plan, man. I got a plan. I'm going to get him. And here's where I'm at right now. All right. First couple of years, horrible, terrible. I was awful. Last place. I got the first round pick in 75 and the first round pick that year. If I wouldn't have had it, the next guy would have taught Robin Yount. I got him as the first pick. By the way, he's horrible. And it has been since I signed him.
Since he signed Yount, he's been an anchor to his team, dragging him down every season.
Well, he didn't turn into a great player till 78.
Yes.
Yes, but I held on to him because I had another plan. And Gary Templeton came up. Wasn't worth much the first year in 76. 77, he's played all year, and he's played great. Of course, the real trade in real life in 79 was everybody thought was crazy at the time. The Cardinals sent Templeton to the Padres and got Ozzie for him. I think somebody else was involved with that deal as well. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. Somehow or another, and Steve can talk a little bit about this, I made it to the World Series last year, and I wound up with the 6th-round pick for 77.
78-win World Series team.
Yep. Nobody picked this guy, and so he was available. I didn't really need him, but Alan Trammell got him. Drafted him.
Trammell fell to him with the 6th pick.
Alan Trammell fell to me with the 6th pick. The drafting so far has been crazy in this league. I'm like, I already have Bert Campaneris, who's pretty solid, shortstop guy. He's actually been playing second base for me. He has a lot of innings. Like, he could play the whole year. He's got good defense. Not the greatest hitter, but he's been fairly solid for me. I have him. I have Templeton. I have Yount, who's played like 6% this year. He's pinch hits every once in a great while. Platoons a little bit with Templeton. Trammell, who's been in the minors obviously all year. He didn't really play. I have all these guys, and all these shortstops are going to eventually get me Ozzie Smith because somebody – Alan Trammell, I might as well hold on to him forever. My emotional attachment to Ozzie Smith is probably going to burn me because if I keep Alan Trammell, my team is probably going to be exponentially better on paper, especially offensively. His defense is still great as well, but I really want Ozzie, so I'm probably going to deal one of these shortstops that I have, maybe Trammell, just to have him because I have to have the wizard, man. And that's probably a foolish move, but I literally am stockpiling shortstops right now that I don't need. But also, I'm going to be able to make some great deals. So whatever glaring hole that I have coming up, somebody who needs a shortstop or really doesn't need one, I've got Yount, Trammell, Templeton, Campaneris. Who's not going to want to deal with me on that? Anybody got any advice for a noob like me in this situation?
Well, Chris and I were talking about this the other day. There's only 5 bands of defense, right? As far as we know. And I feel like if there was a 6th band of defense, Ozzie Smith would be in that range. He'd be super excellent or something.
Yes.
Since there isn't that, I wonder how much value he does have. I feel like that probably steals a lot of his value.
He has a really low fielding percentage too, so that helps in the middle infield.
That does help for sure.
I figure his price is based on his rating. Not he can't have this super X rating, so he's not priced for a super X rating.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. He doesn't even start getting on base for a while, man. It might be better to hold on to Trammell or something, then trade for Ozzie. Let this guy use him in his bad years.
Right. And I thought about that, and I'm probably run year maybe 85, 80, maybe even late 80s is when I'll probably finally make the deal and get him somehow. Just because I want him. But if I'm winning, I'm going to again.
Have the New York announcers been pronouncing that Detroit shortstop's name wrong all the years I was watching?
Yeah. And everybody always says Trammell. It's Trammell. Just like David's name is Blu-ray. Everybody knows that. Of course. Duh.
Well, I think you have to go with Yount in his MVP year, right? That's like a huge season.
You suffered through with Yount this far. You might as well keep because he's literally drug you down. You have a $5 million player you can't even use because his defense is so bad and his offense sucks also. But he has 660 plate appearances or something. Yeah. So he's worth something, but he just had to keep him in his minors and eat that money.
How could I not have signed Alan Trammell when he fell to me at number 6? I couldn't let somebody else get him. And
I was just wondering, what's Yount's air rating in that?
Oh, this is just his rookie year. We don't know what it was.
He was fair, I think.
Fair 174
to
174.
Yeah. Horrible.
Horrible.
He actually was using him. I had to be like, hey, what's going on here, man? That ain't gonna work. Fair 174.
He's probably had maybe 20 at bats this whole season. We have 18 games left. So
he'll hurt you less at DH than he will at shortstop.
Yes, that's true.
He will. But I got Hal McRae at DH, and he is probably the top offensive player in the whole league this year. He's awesome. He has 40 doubles already.
Yount's pretty good by 79 or 80, right?
Yeah.
And then he's like a freaking monster in 82.
Yep.
That's definitely a difference with a progression league. Is I have never had to use anybody like 174 at shortstop.
You'll have to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
It does make it more interesting, and you do have to plan harder and think about what you're doing more. You might even have to pull off a trade or something.
Yeah, there's going to be some big trades this offseason because it is going to be a shortstop sale from the Gateway Archers this year. Let's move on to another topic. Chris, you said you wanted to bring something up about the Cardinals. You want to talk some more smack. You want to get into this again about the greatest franchise ever in the history of baseball?
No, I wanted to talk about the Stars.
Oh,
Okay.
The St. Louis Stars, yeah.
Oh, the St. Louis Stars.
Your,
Yes, okay. Based off of our interview with the great Ed Wheatley. And if you guys, I mean, even if you're not a St. Louis fan, just being a fan of baseball, this knowledge and that this guy has, these books are great. I mean, he's spoken at Cooperstown a couple of times. His books are on the top 100 baseball books lists of all time. Like, he won the best baseball book in 2017, 2020. Check his Brown stuff out. But Star stuff, Chris, go ahead, man.
Yeah. No, you guys were talking about the like, and Steve brought it up, that secretly the greatest player to ever play for St. Louis was Oscar Charleston, right?
Yeah.
Who played 1 year. I think that's a reasonable assessment. I mean it's hard to really compare, obviously, to what Musial did for 22 years.
Oh yeah.
So it's sort of like the Wayne Gretzky,
Right.
Brett Hull thing here, because we only had Wayne Gretzky for a couple months, but he's still the greatest hockey player that ever played here. There's no way you can argue that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that team, that St. Louis team was tremendous, and they had the guy, there's a statue of Cool Papa Bell, right, outside the stadium now.
Yes.
But that team had other Hall of Famers. They had Mule Suttles and Willie Wells. And
Willie Wells was born in St. Louis, so that's pretty cool.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wells, I talk about Turkey Stearns a lot, but Wells, I think it's the four guys that everybody knows from Negro Leagues are Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and Charleston, who are, well, Jim, you can argue about them being like the greatest at their positions all time. Major Leagues, Negro Leagues, everything. And also Pop Lloyd, right? I think Stearns and Wells are pretty much right there. Go back and look at Wells's numbers in his years with St. Louis, and they're freaking amazing. Like, they look like he hit 390 with 25 home runs and 380 at bats or something. And he just looks like A-Rod. Like, he's like a 22-year-old shortstop with power and average and defense. And definitely one of the more, I think, overlooked players. And I mean, they're all basically overlooked, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
but you don't have. I think it's excuse me. You don't have Satchel Paige telling stories about Willie Wells for 20 years, like he did about Cool Papa Bell, and everybody knows those stories, right? And Bell was a great player, but those are guys. And Suttles was like a huge hitter who is probably comparable to someone like an Albert Bell or
That's a good comparison. That is
Hank
a good
Greenberg,
comparison.
I think. This big, powerful right-handed slugger. Excuse me, not a defensive guy. But yeah, I just want to talk about them because they don't get too much. They don't get enough attention, I think, in the whole. That's what's great about this game is we can learn about these guys and use them. And
I didn't know anything about Leon Day till I started playing.
And Leon Day might be the best guy to use of all of them. He is such a good. You can platoon him when the days he's not playing because he's good against lefties. You can use him as a defensive replacement. He's super fast. He can steal bases, and he's an ace. He's a good player.
I've used him. I think he's my most used player.
What does he cost right now?
It's around 11 million.
Okay.
He's good.
Tyler's like, what does he cost right now? Okay. All
There's
right.
a price where I won't use him, but it's not it's not near 11 million. I don't think. It's probably 12 and a half, I think.
Bullet Joe Rogan is just a little bit better version of Leon Day. I mean, he's a little
much
bit
more
better.
expensive, though. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Yeah,
I mean, he'll never get hurt, and he can, like, you could throw him into ace mode, get a bunch of innings out of him. You could DH him when he's not. He can hit. He'll crush lefties too. He's not as good of a fielder as Leon Day, but he's average out there. He's got a good arm. Yeah.
And he's probably, I think I've seen people say he's going to get better when they do the Negro League relaunch.
Well, I would assume so, just because based on, like, we have much better stats now than, we have much better stats now than when we made the game. They made the game. They coded these guys like 15, 20 years ago, but he's probably a better hitter than what he's coded as right now.
I wish we had better evidence about Joe Williams. I mean, he could have been Walter Johnson. Maybe he wasn't. We just don't know.
Double Duty Radcliffe is another one who's really good to use because you can defensive replacement with him. I mean, you don't have to carry a third catcher. He's another useful player to use out of that batch.
He's kind of pricey, I think, though, isn't he? I'm trying to.
He still gives you an extra roster space. I kind of think of him as like an extra roster space.
Yeah, I've used him a couple of times. He had one good year and he had a bad year. I think he gives up a few home runs is the only problem. But yeah, he's pretty good.
He's really useful.
Well, I think David brought up a topic earlier, and I think I'm going to bring it up now. He kind of would talk about maybe baseball fandom. Where did it all start? I'd be willing to discuss that with you guys here.
And who was the first team that really gave you satisfaction?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start because obviously you guys are all geniuses when it comes to this game. I don't know shit from apple butter when it comes from fantasy baseball. I'm learning as I go, and I'm learning from all you guys. All I do is sit here and listen, and I'm going to apply all this stuff to my game, and so far it's been helping me out a lot. But, I mean, it's real easy for me to Steve to answer this question where the love of baseball comes from. I mean, they don't call it baseball heaven in St. Louis for a reason. And, yeah, you could say whatever you want about Cardinals and the Cardinals fans, but, I mean, you the day you're born and by the time you could talk or do anything, you love baseball, not just the St. Louis Cardinals. It's kind of taught to you as a child, and the baseball fans respect and love for the game. And that's what St. Louis kind of prides themselves on, and what I kind of try to, preach myself. Of course, you got your rivalries and you got your asshole fans and, Cubs fans. Oh, Cardinals fans they're all assholes, and Cardinals fans, oh, Cubs fans are all, violent and this and that, and talk shit all the time. And it's just, there's something about the city of St. Louis and baseball that's special. And even the players, when they come to town, they all talk about it. Oh man, I love my favorite city to come to is St. Louis. The fans are great. They cheer the other team if they make a great play. A great player comes to town. They give them, good ovations when they come to the plate. Honoring the players in their last season and stuff. Like Chipper Jones, the place went crazy when he did his little retirement tour, and they gave him a hell of a send off. They presented him this award. I just remember, I think I might have been there, and just remember thinking, man, this is a big testament to St. Louis. And you just, if you're from St. Louis, even if you don't like baseball, you just automatically love the Cardinals. Steve, would you agree? What would you think about that?
I'd say the 82 Cardinals are the team that, I mean, I already love baseball, but the 82 Cardinals we were in a bad stretch for the 70s, weren't making the playoffs or nothing. Through basically my whole small childhood, I didn't see the playoffs or nothing. But then in 82, Whitey Ball sort of came to the forefront, and all that stretch from 82 to 87, it was just the best stretch of baseball pretty much I can imagine ever happened. It was so good with the 300 stolen bases a year, the Mets, the Pond Scum Mets. We had that rivalry with those guys.
Oh, yeah.
Dwight Gooden and Darryl Strawberry, and that whole Darryl chant every time we go to the games. Darryl. I just love to yell at him.
So did you guys start that? Did you guys start that chant, or was it?
Yeah, but it didn't start with him. It started with in '82. It started with Dale Murphy, and we played the
Brewers.
Braves.
Oh, the Braves. Oh, yeah, the Braves.
Murphy. That's where it started at. With Murphy.
If I had to pick a Cardinal team that really did it for me, it didn't really matter. Like in my childhood years, they were horrible. Like in the early '90s, there wasn't a whole lot of playoff bursts or anything there. For some reason, like the '93 team kind of stands out in my mind, and it wasn't that great. Like we had like Todd Zeal, Greg Jeffries, Mark Whitten,
Ray Langford.
Ray Langford. Yeah,
Ray Langford he's criminally underrated.
Ray Langford is criminally underrated, and he is beloved in St. Louis. Everybody there loves Ray Langford. Of course, Ozzie was still there. I think we still had Okendo at the time.
Maybe.
Who'd we have? Tom Pagnazzi, I think, was catching around then. And I really loved that team. I don't know why. It wasn't that great or anything, but that stands out for me. 93 Cardinals. So, David, what's your story, man?
Well, first time I watched baseball, I discovered it. We were visiting my grandparents for the high holidays in 1967. I was 7 years old. And there's the World Series on a little black and white TV set, watching your Cardinals. I liked the game. I decided in my 7-year-old brain, I liked the sound of the word American better than the sound of the word national. So I became more of an AL fan. So the next year, the regular season is there, and I'm rooting for, you open up the New York Times every day, and there are these big two columns, one for the National League, one for the American League, with New York bolded. And so I become a fan of the Yankees and the Mets, but hey, I'm an American League fan, so the Yankees are my number one team. And that was, they're both hanging in 8th place for most of the year. Mets finished in 9th. Yankees finished in 5th. They touched 3rd. But okay, so the next year is great with the Mets, 69 and again 73, but still they're only my second favorite team. And all this time, I started out as a 7-year-old watching the Yankees and watching them get slowly better, usually 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Every odd year was bad. Every even year was a new level. Until 1976, when they finally win, finish in first place. And, I'm old enough, so first place is what matters, not winning the World Series. And so, yeah, that was my wonderful time. And then the icing on the cake was Chris Chambliss's home run.
Oh, yeah. Tyler, love of baseball. We've heard your story on our interview that we had with you a little while back. Let's relive it, man.
So I watched the Blue Jays I started in about 2006, and the team that they had from 06 to 08 was really good, but never got close to the playoffs. They were just in a really tough division. But I think I read an article once that showed that analytically 4 of the best teams in baseball at that time were all in the AL East. So they were a really good team, which was pretty cool. But I think my favorite year was, I believe it was 2015, and it's going to be embarrassing if I have the year wrong. But they made the playoffs for the first time, and it was a series against Texas in the divisional series when Bautista flipped his bat in Game 5. And
2011?
No, it was more recent. I think it was 2015.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, somewhere around in there. Because I was in St. Louis at a Cardinals game and was staying at the Hilton across the street. And I went into the Hilton across the street because they have an Emo's Pizza. St. Louis is the square beyond compare, the greatest pizza ever made, Emo's Pizza. And that's why I stay at that Hilton Hotel, because they have one right in there. Went to the Cardinals game, went over there, and that playoff game was on. The Cardinals were playing. It was 2015. The Cardinals were playing the Cubs in Game 1 of the NLDS. Game was over. We went to Emo's to get pizza, and that game was on TV. And I saw the bat flip home run that night. I think that's when that happened.
I was so amped up for that game because in the top of the 7th, I believe it was, the Blue Jays catcher threw the ball back to the pitcher, and did it wrong. Like it hit the bat of the batter and rolled away, and the guy from third base scored the go-ahead run. That was the correct ruling, but at the time, the broadcasters on the Blue Jays game didn't know that. So they were saying that it was the wrong ruling, and so I was really upset. Like, oh my God, they're gonna lose on a bad umpire call and be eliminated from the playoffs. And then in the bottom of the inning, I can't remember his name, playing shortstop for Texas, but he made like 3 errors in the inning to allow the Blue Jays to get runners on, and then Bautista hits his 3-run home run and flips his bat, and everybody got mad about that. But
that was a great bat flip. I don't care what anybody said. It was awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that was definitely my favorite year. And I didn't even care that they got knocked out the next series against Kansas City, because nothing could top that series against Texas.
Yeah. Baud, what do you got to add on this, man?
I actually, it was funny because I remember the interview you had with Dane, and he talked about being a Pirates fan, being young, and then they won the World Series. And he's hooked, right? And that kind of happened to me, where I was a Phillies fan, and I had been to some games. There's one game I specifically remember. It was such an unusual game where this player, Mike Tyson, on the Cubs, who's a very light-hitting second baseman, hit 2 home runs off Nino Espinosa, and the Phillies still won. Like, Espinosa pitched a complete game, giving up 5 runs or something. It's like totally alien era from today, right? That was probably like 78 or 79, and I didn't really get what was going on. But then the Phillies won the World Series in '80, and then I'm obsessed, right? I'm like, I bought every baseball magazine and baseball cards, and like learned everything I could, and like read everything about that season and everything, and just like reliving it in the off season. So yeah, I was hooked after that.
How about this?
I also became like, I always kind of had like an American League team I liked, and in the 80s, like, I adopted the Blue Jays, and when I turned 21, I was in a bar watching them win the World Series for the first time when they beat the Braves. So that was fun too.
Baseball Mike Tyson came up with the Cardinals.
Yes,
he did. Yep.
Yep, I had him on my team for a little while, and then he had to go. But yeah, I used him for a while. He's actually didn't have really that bad of a glove, if what I remember. He wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. But how about this? Favorite player of all time and why? And then we'll move on to something else. We all know what yours is, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give somebody else. Well, right now I like Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty's the man. I love Jack Flaherty. He's my current favorite player. He's super good, and he's like politically aware. He says the right thing. He's a good dude.
David.
I guess Willie Randolph.
Ooh, good one. When I hear the name Willie Randolph, you guys ever seen the movie Big Daddy with Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
And he adopts his kid. He's not supposed to, and he's like kind of falls in love with him. Right in their early stage, he's like, "Well, come on, let's go do some awesome stuff." And he takes them all over the place. He takes them to a baseball field, and he puts catcher's gear on him, and he's trying to teach him how to play baseball. And he's hitting ground balls to him. He's like, "You're doing great. You're the next Willie Randolph." And he's bouncing, like balls are bouncing off his kid's chest and flying everywhere.
Well, I wanted to talk about Randolph bouncing off the chest, because his numbers were a lot better than his defensive numbers were a lot better than the feeling you got watching him. Because he was the one, he realized it and nobody else did. A lot of these low, really sharp grounders, and you got the other second baseman in the league trying to field him cleanly with the glove, and most of the time they do, but sometimes it goes through. And Randolph would get down low himself and let it bounce off his chest, and then pick the ball up and throw to first base in plenty of time. So it was innovative and it worked.
I mean, the epitome of getting in front of the ball. I mean, blocking the ball. I mean, that goes without saying. That's awesome. I mean, that's what a guy like Willie Randolph was supposed to do, in my opinion.
But it's not. It wasn't the way everybody else was playing second base.
Nope. Tyler, favorite ball player ever and why? Go.
It's hard to pick one, but probably Roy Halladay.
Oh yeah.
It's just he was throwing all these complete games at a time when almost nobody was throwing them. Like there were times, I don't know if he ever finished a season like this, but it wouldn't surprise me. But I know there were times within a season when he had more complete games than entire other teams combined, and it wasn't even close. And like I remember a game against the Tigers that he played where I don't remember it with incredible detail or anything, but it was something like a 1-0 win for the Blue Jays in 11 innings, maybe 10 or 11, and he got a complete game, which is just, I mean, that's virtually
Crazy.
Unheard of now, and even at that time, it was stunning.
I mean, with a pitcher like Roy Halladay and he's going that deep in the game, if that manager gets any, like, up the second step of the dugout, probably the death stare that he gave the dugout was probably all that he had to do there. And when I think of Roy Halladay, I mean, the great relationship him and Chris Carpenter had, you know, with us Cardinals fans, and that awesome, I mean, one of the best pitchers duels of all time. That Game 5, was it the NLDS that year of 2011, where Carpenter and Halladay both went pretty much all the way deep in the game, and the Cards win like 1-0. You remember that,
when
Steve?
he was with the Phillies,
Yeah.
right?
That's when he was with the Phillies.
Yeah.
And then those guys were so tight. And then, like, Steve, were you like, did you feel really bad when Roy Halladay died in that plane crash? Because it's like, oh man, I know Chris Carpenter is devastated right now. That was a bad one, man.
Yeah.
Chris Carpenter was a cool dude.
Yep, he was. I mean, talk about a gamer, like just a pure gamer. You know, a guy who was out there like psyched up all the time, and like a lot of people hated it because of that. They're like, God damn, I hate playing against that Chris Carpenter. He's just a fucking madman. But
well, I was going to say one thing that just popped into my head about Roy Halladay that kind of emphasized for me just how incredibly good he was every time he would have an outing where he would give up like 4 runs in 6 innings or something, fans would start asking if he was hurt. Like he would have one off game and people thought there must be something wrong with him.
No, that's staying. That goes back to staying the course, something that I've had to learn to do in this game. Fantasy baseball, oh, this guy's terrible. He's gone. Then as soon as you release him, somebody immediately signs him. And you go, oh, shit. Yep, I just messed up big time. And Steve's like,
how many times?
Steve's like, not very many before Steve's like, yep, you're an idiot. What the hell did you do that for? All right. Baud, who's the baseball player that you love the most?
It's hard for me to pick one. Definitely Mike Schmidt is way up there. And I feel like I actually realized when I was like 10, 12, 13, like this is like the greatest player in Phillies history, like by far, you know. I was keenly aware of that. And then there's like, I went through this period where like I had a bunch of favorite players who I regret. They were really like Lenny Dykstra and Kurt Schilling.
I was gonna bring up Dykstra. I was like, your favorite player's not Lenny Dykstra? Why? What's up with that?
You know, God, they were fun. They were fun to watch. You know, the '93 Phillies were a really fun team actually. But like the more recent, I love Mookie Betts and I love Tatis. They're fantastic. You know, I actually am on the West Coast now, so I'm in the right time zone to follow them. And they're like those are 2 guys worth the price of admission, you know, and they're fun and they're probably 2 of the best players in the National League, right?
There's a bunch of great young guys right now too, man.
Yeah.
When's the last time we had a crop like this?
I can't remember a time.
Who's your guys' favorite of those guys?
Favorite new player, like best young player?
It's easy for me. Juan Soto. I love Juan
Yeah.
Soto.
Yeah, he's
It's
amazing.
Otani for me.
Otani.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, Tony. I love Tony. Yeah,
What
Like
he's doing
Guerrero.
is just incredible.
it's a pretty good group right now.
Yeah, it's a really good group. It's been a long time since we've had a crop like this. Maybe since the whole A-Rod Jeter era, when all those guys came up similar time.
Early 50s, too, when first generation of black superstars.
87, a bunch of people came out around 87 too. A bunch of guys.
The Bonds, Larkin,
McGuire was a little before then.
Yeah.
Canseco.
Will Clark was big.
Yeah, a bunch of those guys. Maybe Frank Thomas. I think Frank Thomas too, wasn't it?
I think
Frank Thomas came up along with Olerud and Bagwell and
Thomas
Roberto
and Bagwell
and
is good.
Alomar.
That was like 89 or 90-ish, wasn't it?
Yeah, Thomas
Yeah.
Bagwell is same age exactly, right? Born on the
Same day, yes.
If I had to pick a favorite player of all time, this one was really hard for me. I was thinking about this the whole time that you guys were saying it. And I came up with this because, like, I would always be a fan of, like, when I was a little kid, the Cardinals weren't always in the playoffs or anything. But, like, I remember the A's of the late 80s, the Bash Brothers, you know, Canseco, McGuire, all those guys, Dave Stewart, Terry Steinbach, Eckersley, you know, those great teams that they had. And I would become fans of those guys. Like, I love the A's team. I love the Atlanta Braves teams of the 90s. Like, David Justice was a guy for that. I loved him because I loved his batting stance. I always thought his batting stance looked awesome. Where he kind of
Reminded me of Winfield.
where he kind of like he had this cool
So
like
tall.
arch, this cool tall
Yeah,
arch in his bat.
Yeah.
I love sweet swings. But my favorite player of all time, and I love this guy even back when he was on the A's, was I got to go with Big Mac. I got to go with Mark McGuire.
He's way up there for me too.
And here's why. And I loved him on the A's. And when I played the 1991 RBI baseball on Sega, I was always the A's because McGuire was on the team, and I would just mash homers with him all the time. But here's another thing. The Cards signed him in, 96 we got Big Mac? Steve,
Traded for him. We traded
for him.
TJ Matthews and Kiko Calero, and
And it was in 97.
Yeah,
It was the
97 or 96, one of the two.
I think it was 97. 'cause
It was
the year that
97.
He broke the record.
Yeah, he broke the record in 98. And then 97. Yeah, and 97, I'm like, holy shit, we signed McGuire. It was like a childhood dream came true. Oh, man, what if Mark McGuire played for the Cardinals? It'd be the coolest thing ever. And it really happened.
and there was like the McGuire thing in St. Louis was like a magical year.
It really was. And that was
unbelievable.
That was a magical year for baseball.
So
That whole home run
But
race.
really
McGuire.
here, it was magical because it was going on with McGuire and our arch rival, the Cubs. So this has got two things going on.
And,
we already hate those guys. And
I remember that year very fondly as well because me and Steve's brother, Jason, me and him went to opening day that year in 98, and McGuire hit a grand slam on opening. His first homer of the year was a grand slam. I think it was against the Brewers. And we won that day. And it was just awesome. We're like, oh, yeah, it was just a great opening day. Then he goes on to hit 70 that year. And I don't know. I have to go with Big Mac. And, say what you want about him and all the other crap that happened with him. But Big Mac made a big impact in St. Louis, and we love it. We love you, Big Mac. So Big Mac's
you're
probably
kind of
my
blowing
favorite.
my mind here because I think I've had a false memory for a really long time, which is that I thought McGuire was traded to the Cardinals the same year that he broke the record. And
No, it was mid-season.
It was
came in about
mid-season.
July.
But it was the year before he broke the record, or
Yes.
the year that
Yep,
he
the
did?
year before.
The year he was
Okay.
traded, he led the majors in home runs, but he did not break the record.
Okay.
Yep.
You guys remember it seemed inevitable early on that someone was going to do it, right? In that year,
Yes.
they
both had like over
April,
30. They both had like 30 or 32 homers at the All-Star break.
You
And
see
those
so
other
many
guys
people
hitting them
come
too.
close. I don't know if I'd say inevitable, but yeah, it seemed pretty likely.
Griffey was
Griffey
was on
was
it.
doing it.
Yeah.
that whole era. I remember it just seemed like the guy I thought was going to do it was Albert Bell.
Don't call me Joey. I
Yeah,
love
he
that
was
guy.
just tremendous hitter, right?
Yes.
I thought he was going to do it. But we were just clearly by 96, 97, we're like, all right, so like hitting 50 home runs is like not a big deal anymore.
Yeah.
It seems to happen.
Greg Vaughn can do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that one
So,
skinny
like-
guy on the Diamondbacks did it. What was his name?
Finley or Luis Gonzalez.
Luis Gonzalez. Didn't he get close to 50 one year?
Yeah, I think him and Brady Anderson.
Brady
Yeah.
Anderson.
And
There you
Memorial,
go. That's a
yeah.
crazy one.
Yeah, so like in 97, 98, we have like Pete Griffey and McGuire, and then Sosa just kind of came out of nowhere that year. So they're like,
He's a crazy Sosa stat. I think it's Maris' 61 has only been topped 6 times. I think 3 of them were by Sosa.
Yeah.
He didn't lead the league any of those 3 times.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure those were consecutive years of
No,
Jordan 60.
2 in a row and then 1 a couple of years.
Okay.
Sosa's a little underrated himself, man. He doesn't really get the respect he deserves. He was pretty good.
How did Roger Maris? He doesn't look very good in this game. Like he can't hit lefties at all, really.
He only had
Pretty
2
good.
years, and they
Pardon?
weren't as good as they were famous, but they were very good.
Okay.
Neither MVP was really deserved, but your MVP is partly about a story. You give it to him in 1960 because no, he's not as good as Mantle, but we give it to Mantle all the time. Let's do something new. And then in 61, he hits the 61 home runs, and he's still not as good as Mantle, probably. But that's a really good year, so you got to give and you got to give it to him again. And he ends up with 2 MVPs with only being a very good player, not a great player.
Didn't Albert get screwed out of an MVP because of Barry Bonds? Kind of a similar situation in that one year.
No. Barry
No,
Bonds is way better than Albert Pujols.
it was Bell. The sports writers didn't like him, so they just didn't want to vote for him. I mean, it wasn't even a thing where it was like the other guy was a straight. It was like Mo Vaughn, so it wasn't like he had some big defense and base running.
Mo Vaughn. I love Mo Vaughn.
It was just, but Bell had he had 50 home runs and 50 doubles. It was an insane year, and like Mo Vaughn had a fine year and all, but it was like they're just hitters. Just look at their hitting stats. Like Bell is clearly better.
I guess back then too, though, they probably weren't looking at the right stats a lot of the time.
Yeah,
It took a while.
they did not
Possibly.
pay enough attention to on-base percentage.
I just think the sports writers didn't like Bell.
That too.
Right.
Like I think most people knew.
And they'd also partly made up their mind several weeks in advance. Bell's October that year, September, was out of this world. It really was a legitimately close race with 3 weeks left to go in the season. And then Bell just didn't stop hitting those 3 weeks.
Well, let's hear one last commercial break from our sponsor, the First Assembly God. We'll come back. We'll wrap things up. And let's take a quick break here on Turnbuckle Bros. It's a great day at the First Assembly of God.
Hi, y'all. Pastor Joe Dan down here at the First Assembly of God in southern Missouri. And I'd like to let you know you can rest assured in the knowledge that your children will be safe here. There has not been a case of sexual misconduct levied against us in the past 12 months.
It's a great day at the First Assembly of God. First Assembly of God, Butler County, Missouri. All rights reserved. To Jesus.
Oh,
And
my
we're
goodness.
back. Another message from the fine folks at the First Assembly of God in
Those
Butler
guys.
County, Missouri.
Those guys are wacky.
I mean, the
Those
super
guys are
fan,
wacky.
super fans with a lot of money. We need sponsors, so hey, what the hell? First Assembly of God. Does anybody got anything else they want to bring up before we wrap things up today? Let's hammer one more thing and call it a day. And I just want to say right now, thank you guys for being a part of the show. It's been awesome. I've learned a lot today. And actually, I forgot to do this at the top of the show. I think we all share this. We want to give a special shout out and send our love to a couple of guys that we've all played with and talked with on the boards. Kevin Yaste and Ed Koziarski, a couple of really great guys, great players, are having some health problems, health issues right now. And we
What's
hope you guys-
Kevin's screen name?
God, I can't think of it right now off the top of my head, Steve. We played, so I've every league I've played in Imagine Sports or Diamond, Kevin's been in it. I can't think of a screen name right now to save my life.
Me neither. Sorry about that.
I'll look it up right now, but needless to say, pull through, you guys, kick out, as they would say in the world of wrestling. Ed and Kevin, we're all thinking about you. We hope you guys pull through soon, and hope to see you guys back in the game again. So, while playing a league with me, you'll kick my ass. So, like everybody else does. But just wanted to throw that in there. Thinking about you guys. Is there anything else anybody wants to argue? Actually, you know what? I got an idea. Steve is synonymous on the boards, has been for a long time. Steve's a bit of a heel in some people's eyes in the game. So let me ask you first, Baud. How much has Steve pissed you off over the years in this game?
I don't think Steve has pissed me off. I think he's clearly a character, and he's a lot of fun. And,
yeah, I know.
Yeah. I don't always agree with the things he says, but he has a lot of success, and he's a cool dude. So.
Oh.
Well, thanks, man.
Steve, you do have one fan after all.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
I have a homework assignment for Steve.
Let's hear it.
All right. Steve, you gotta give me. You're the king of the cheap pitchers. You gotta give me some single season pitchers for the next the ladder league. All right?
Oh man,
it's I think it's
so.
Like
here's how I pick pitchers.
2005 to 2015 or something like that.
This is how I pick pitchers. I don't at all until I've already drafted all my players. Okay.
He does it every year.
I do it every year. But basically, when DVD was talking earlier about like role playing, sometimes I was like, well, I should definitely keep this pitcher because he's way better, but I can't because that's off character for me, and I just can't. So I mean, I would, but I won't because I do that. But whatever. A little while ago, DVD said something where he like bases his players off some runs created formula. I used to do the same thing with linear weights. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all, but I used to do the same thing with that. And that's how I got to where I don't really care about pitching that much. I just, okay, you can spend your money preventing runs and scoring runs. And I choose to get some of my run prevention in the same place I'm getting my scoring too. I worry about defense. I spend my money on defense and offense, and I'll just worry about the pitching last. When it's in the single season game, it's pretty simple. Like, if a guy has 17 innings and he costs $1,300, that's a good goddamn pitcher. If he has 180 innings and he costs $1,300, he's not. And I mean, basically, you could really, really base it on that alone, and just pick enough innings, just barely scrape by. You're getting free innings, right? So if you buy 100 innings, you really get 110. So you gotta pay attention to that because they give you that 10% bonus.
I'll buy that for single season. In Classic, at any price point, there are some pitchers who are a lot better than other pitchers.
I think that's what blew my mind about what you said last time about pitching. You're like, I don't care what pitchers I have because I've never played single season, so that could be the difference. But I would be curious, if you were playing Classic and you were playing in a standard league, what would you spend on pitching? Like, would you still go super cheap?
I go super cheap still, but I don't go cheap on run prevention. Do you know what I mean? I spend a lot of money on good players they can run fast. Yeah. They can, take runs away. Jump over the wall, Lars Nootbaar style. But
I think your approach definitely. I mean, you've had a lot of success with it. I'm just like, how cheap would be cheap? Like, would you go under 20 million on your pitching staff?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, easily. He does it every year.
Easy.
Sickening. Last year, he's like, I spent barely anything on my pitching. Drafted last. Got the best pitching staff.
Yeah, I had the best pitching staff. It's easy.
It's ridiculous.
A lot of what people are, attributing to their pitching staff is really their defense. Why would I want to pay for run prevention twice? I just pay for it the one time and, take my chances.
That would work in Classic. I mean,
it works in Classic. It does.
Every run prevented is a run prevented. And
Yes.
they add up. You could do one, you could do the other, you could do both, as long as you get good values. You could win games 13-11, or you could win games 3-2.
There's
Yeah,
also
for
the
sure.
piling on effect. Like when you pile on, it gets easier to score runs. They start bringing in scrubs. You know, the mop up
Mhm.
man comes in, and you just start. You know, I'm going to give up 7 runs anyway, but their manager doesn't know it. So he's like, let's bring in the mop up man. He's beating me 7-0. So then I get to 14-0. And then the games end up to be 14-8. You know what I mean? That happens a lot. Piling it on. I pile on. I want to score 15 crooked numbers.
That's awesome.
My strategy this year for my team, I'm usually kind of a one team kind of guy, especially with this progression thing, because I work my real job about 60 hours a week, and usually when I get home after a 12-hour day, I eat a sandwich real quick and I sit down here and start talking to Steve and do shows. So my days are really, really long. So I really only have time for one team. I don't even have time for the one team anymore, but I still manage to do my managing here and there when I can. My strategy this year was I noticed that why am I losing so many one-run games? It happened to me too much. I mean, have you guys noticed how that happens a lot in the game? There are a lot of one-run games. Do you guys see that? Do you guys also see that as well?
I do, but here's the thing about one-run games everybody gets wrong. If you lose in one-run games, that means you almost won. You're doing good. I mean, you almost won. What you don't want to
almost a
do is
coin toss.
lose a bunch of games 14-8. You know what I mean?
I lose an
I don't really worry
astronomical
about one-run
amount.
games too much.
I
You know,
lose
I
an
know I'm doing good.
astronomical amount of one-run games, so I was thinking, what can I do to make that little bit of difference?
Are you not winning also? If you're way under 500 in one-run games, then that really is an issue. But if you're just losing a lot, yeah, so is everybody else. If you're way under 500, get a better closer.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's a bullpen thing, right?
And so I went the bullpen thing approach, and I'm a reverse splits bullpen kind of guy. Like I like to have a guy that's like, has a fair amount of innings that might be 435 OPS against rights. And if he's 80 against lefts, he's pull out one against rights and only faces righties. He might only face that one hitter in a certain situation.
435.
Yeah. Like I'll find guys with a couple of innings.
He's talking about OPS
OPS
versus when he said 435.
OPS splits. And so
that's shockingly low.
You will find a lot of that stuff going on in single season.
All the time.
Okay.
I find them all the time. And I'll pay a couple million for a guy who's got 20, great innings against righties, and it wins me games a lot. And I set my bullpen up with guys like that. It's been working for me, having specialists, and they burn up, and I'll just bring another guy in. So sometimes you'll find some diamonds in the rough that nobody's looking at or trying to use, and I'm like, all right, I can't really. I'm not hitting lefties as good or whatever, and I'll look for guys like that as well. But I find these relievers that nobody's ever heard of that got awesome reverse splits, and I set them all to pull at one, and they come in to get that one huge right-handed out or left-handed out. And I've been in first place all year, and my bullpen has come through so huge. And plus, it doesn't hurt when you have 1977 Bruce Sutter, who is just absolutely lights out against both lefties and righties. So that helped a little bit as well. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Nice going.
I'll say one thing about this. I actually think that there's not much you can do about one-run games.
There isn't.
I think most people do think like, oh my God, I need a better bullpen. But sometimes it doesn't matter. It's just like, it's kind of luck.
If you're losing one-run games, it might be that you just need another home run too. You might not need a closer. You might need a good pinch hitter.
Maybe you need better pinch hitters.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to handle that.
But generally, if you have a good team, usually you're not going to get blown out, right? So the game you lose.
Yeah.
I very rarely get blown out too.
Exactly the way I look at it, Chris.
And
but those series are frustrating. Like when you win 9-2, and then you lose 4-3 and 3-2. Like those are very frustrating.
Happens to me all the time.
That looks like you just have a better team, and the other team
got lucky twice. Yeah, that's exactly the way I look at it.
In the long run, you stagger in we'll show you how good your team is.
Yep,
Yeah, like
sure will.
but sometimes you just have seasons like that where like you led the league in run differential and you're in third place. Like,
And it's like when you think about the luck that plays into a 1-run loss, it can be as much as hitting a home run then a single instead of the other way around.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
There's nothing you can do about that, really.
Yep.
Yeah. That's why I like to do these shows with you guys, because I'm like, oh. Okay.
Another tip for the
I'm gonna do
SSG.
that now.
You really only need 350 at bats for a guy to make him an effective player in the playoffs. You know, that is the number I'm looking for. I got a guy right now. I paid $12 million or something for him. He's set 1977 Cliff Johnson. He's only got 350 at bats, but he's a full-time player in the playoffs, and he's basically Babe Ruth once we get to the playoffs. He's a monster. You know what I mean? I'm just playing him as a platoon guy right now, but once the playoffs hit, he's number one. He's my number one guy. He's going to be batting number in the 2 hole and playing every game.
In 1977, how bad a catcher was he?
He wasn't that bad. He's fair. I don't really care about the throw, and he's fair 5 or something like that.
A 5's not too bad. The pass balls rolling. Yankees got him, and the rep was, the running game's going to go crazy. And he could actually throw runners out. The problem was if the runner just waits for the ball to get by him, runs you.
But that guy can hit, too. He could hit.
Yeah, he was a guy who, honestly, probably, if they just make him a DH from the start, he's probably hits 500 home runs.
Or first baseman.
Yeah, knocking on the door for the Hall of Fame, too, probably.
Yeah, like he was a tremendous hitter. There's a couple guys like that from that era. They were just like messing around with them, having a catch like Earl Williams and
there's a couple of those guys.
Cliff
Brian
Johnson.
Downing, maybe.
Yeah. Well,
Dale Murphy.
Yeah, Dale Murphy. That's a good one.
Downing got into the fitness regime, so to speak.
Hell yeah, he did. That guy was jacked.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, that strategy with your boy Cliff Johnson, would work if you were gonna make the playoffs this year, but you're not.
Yes, yeah, I will.
Because
what's the cap in your progression league?
130.
Normal upgrades.
Yep, $2 million a year. That's all it is. It's you're basically draft good, and you're there. You're all right. That's all you gotta do. Draft good.
I virtually had the same team that made it to the World Series last year than this year, and I really didn't make a whole lot of changes offensively. Got a couple of guys like Trammell. I just signed him, and he's been in the minors. The whole time he's been inactive, just waiting to maybe keep him or make a deal. I changed out some bullpen guys. I kept all my starters, and I'm winning still again. But I've got guys like Keith Hernandez who are, starting to get really good. And he's having a great 77 for me right now. Hal McRae's crushing the ball. I've got Lyman Bostock leading off, he's
about to get shot in the face, though. It's not going to last long.
He's about to get shot in the face, but he's
almost over.
He's my leadoff hitter, and he's awesome. I got a guy named Larry Hizzle. Larry Hissel in the outfield. He's really good.
And Keith Hernandez at second.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally putting Keith Hernandez at second base.
It wouldn't be too bad in this game because he would, lose 2 bands. He would be the average 48 or something at second. It might work. You could do that with first baseman.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they got a super low number. I've done it before. It works.
I'm not going to give up 2 bands on any player.
You might have to in this league if you don't have anybody else.
That's true.
Sometimes I won a World Series with the 3 third basemen. All I had was 3 third basemen. One of them played short, and one of them played first, and one of them played third. I forget what the 3 of them. It was a 1940s team, and I just had 3 third basemen and no way to get nobody else. So that's that way it went.
I'm interested in something you said a few minutes ago about not caring about catcher throw rating.
Yeah, I don't care about that too much. It's okay. This is why. I'll explain it to you.
Sure.
So, all right. If you have an excellent guy, what ends up happening is they don't try to run. So you can't steal outs from them that way. But if you have an average guy,
true. I've seen people say that, but I have Cochran right now in 2 teams, and teams are running on him, and he's throwing out so many base runners.
Yeah.
Well, it depends really on the league you get.
what was shown by somebody doing a big study about 10 years ago on the board, and this is before the defensive reset, maybe it changed, the caught stealing number stayed the same no matter what how many caught stealing stayed the same no matter what the rating was. But the worse the rating was, the more stolen bases there were.
Oh, so this percent goes down. The success rate goes down, basically?
Yeah, the success rate goes down if and the attempts go down if you're for a better thrower.
The other thing that they do, the excellent catchers do, is they backpick runners, and you almost never see someone without an excellent arm do that. And
they
it's
got
kind
paid
of
for that
awesome.
arm too, though. Like people want those guys, so they cost more.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. I would say, like right now with the current prices, there's a lot of really good value catchers who are like in the 10 mil range.
Yeah, like right now in Classic, like Cochran's just like an outrageous value. Like he'll be a value if he was just an average defensive player.
Really, with
Right.
catchers defense, you just don't get a really bad one. You just don't worry about it. Just like if it's really bad, if it's John Bacabella or whatever his name is, that really bad. No, what's that guy's name that starts with a B? Who's terrible?
Lefrey.
Yeah,
Kurt
that
Lefrey.
guy. You don't want him. You don't want him, but anybody else, whatever. Fine, let's go.
When I first started playing, I didn't know to look at pass ball rate, and I thought that Pop Snyder was going to be this amazing backup catcher because he could throw runner. He had an excellent arm, and then when I found out about pass ball rate, he had like a 7 or an 8 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
that's a killer right there. That's a killer.
Well, guys, maybe it's about time to wrap it up. I think this is an awesome first ever edition of the Kings Roundtable. We'll do this again sometime. And so definitely want to thank David, DVD, Blu-ray, Laserdisc, Betamax, VHS, Avins for his first appearance on the show. And you know what, Steve? I think we should bring him on for his own interview because he's a hell of a talker, and he's got.
I give him 5 Carrascos. That's my
all
rating.
right.
5 Carrascos.
David wins the DJ Carrasco Award today for having
It's a
almost as
great
good
DJ
of a
Carrasco.
podcast voice as me. And of course, we want to thank. That's what everybody says on the board. Hey, I'm just go with the flow, man. I definitely want to thank Chris Baud from Deadspin.com. Thank you so much for coming on the show again. Tyler, our boy, our Canadian brother in California, kicking some ass in a short period of time on the game. And of course, for the Lime Ripper himself, the pain in the ass, Steve Mutzu. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Stick around, guys. We'll talk a little bit offline after this. But what a hell of a roundtable on Turnbuckle Bros. And for all these awesome guys, I will say,